You're listening to Young PR Pros, episode 113, Making Choices in Your Career.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Young PR Pros, a weekly podcast for the young and young at heart PR pros looking for tips and advice on how to build and advance their careers. I am Kristine D'Arbelles in Ottawa, Canada.
I'm Ross Simmonds in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Clare Bonnyman in Kitchener, Ontario.
So I'm going to hand over the mic to our wonderful producer, Clare Bonnyman, who's going to introduce the topic of today's episode.
Yeah. So this episode's topic is career choices, which is something that is very close on my mind all the time. It's those moments and those decisions that feel like they can make or break your career, you know, whether or not they actually do. For any young professional, these kinds of decisions can kind of make you feel almost claustrophobic. It's something that everyone's experienced or is going to experience, and whether it's choosing a different industry or a career path or making the move to start your own business or even, you know, moving to a new city for a job, there are some pretty important decisions and choices that everyone will come across at some point in their career path. So, guys, I turn to you. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when someone brings up the topic of career choices?
The first thing that comes to mind when you say the word making big career choices is having to make that very difficult decision about choosing a job based on the experience it's going to give you versus potentially a higher paycheck. And I went through this experience at the early onset of my career when I had the opportunity to get this other job, and it was gonna pay more, but I realized it was really not going to be bringing me into the direction that I wanted for my career. And I think it's really hard for young professionals to not want to jump for that or want to go for that job that has a higher paycheck. We all have student debts to pay. Depending on where you are in your life, you be starting a family, you may want to buy a house, you may want to buy a new car, you might want to go traveling, and seeing a higher paycheck or potentially higher salary might all of a sudden you might be thinking about all these amazing things that you could do with that money. But I think as young professionals, because we're so early on in our career, we have to be even pickier at this stage, because we want to make sure that any job that you pick at every single stage of your career is going to bring you in the direction that you want for your career, and not just based on money. So I know we'll be talking, I'll be diving a little bit more into this topic later on in the episode, but that's really what I think of when you say, Claire, you know, big career decisions.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think for me, when I think about career choices, I think about when I made some serious, significant career choices in my life, and it was essentially taking out a notebook and writing out all of the different options and listing the pros and cons between a variety of different opportunities that were on the table. I think that the biggest pro that you can have when you're going through a moment when you're looking to make some of those important decisions about whether you should go to one company over the next is really understanding the rate in which you are going to learn things that are new, but also how well you're going to be able to essentially level up as it relates to your skill set. I think that in the early days of your career, those two things are the most important reasons why you should make a career change or take a leap into something different. It's to learn new things very quickly, but also push yourself to a limit where you're gaining skills that you wouldn't be able to gather if you didn't take this opportunity as it relates to this new career choice.
So, speaking as a young professional, obviously this is a subject that's super close to my heart and on my mind a lot these days. And young professionals today are making lots of choices, whether it's how to enter the job market after you graduate, whether or not to take an internship, leaving one job for another, moving. The list is really endless. And if you're listening to this on your phone or computer or however you are, chances are that you have made a decision like this at some point. And if you haven't, then hopefully by the end of this episode, you're going to be fully prepared about how to make that decision when you come to it. And looking at our listeners and myself, what do you two think are some of the biggest choices or decisions that we'll be making in our careers? And do you guys have any advice for them/me?
So the biggest choice, going back to what I was mentioning on early in the episode, I actually had to make that big decision at a young age to take a job or to actually not take a job in this scenario, just because it was offering more money. I was offered a job that had a higher title, more money early on in my career. And of course, early on in your career, anything that looks like a really fancy title and lots of money and benefits obviously seems like, well, this is heaven. Why shouldn't I be jumping for it? But then I did a little bit more research into the role, and I realized that this was really not bringing me into the direction that I wanted my career to go in. And if I would have picked that job, then I would be pointing, I'd be somewhere different by now. I'd be pointing my career in a different way. I mean, there's so many different things that you could do at the early onset of your career. There is the way of, spray and pray, just kind of try a whole bunch of different things, and that can be a strategy if you want, jumping from different jobs until you really find something that sticks or really find something that you're passionate about. And sometimes it does take that a little bit to find your passion. But if you do know where you're going and you have a vague idea, again, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to be in this position 10 years from now. But even if it's just something vague, you want to be in public relations or marketing or communications or government relations, if you vaguely know where you want to go, then making a career choice early on in your career not based on money is really important. And really overanalyzing a job, doing your research to make sure that this job is going to point you in the right direction. And I had to do that difficult research, and I really had to sit there, and despite how attractive the new job really looked, I really looked at where I was, where this job was going to be. And then luckily for me, I actually found out that this job was going to be pointing me more into the directions of sales and business development. And you know what? Thank God I didn't take that. I never wanted to be a salesperson. That is not what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to work with clients, work on projects. That's where I feel most passionate and really happy. So sometimes it's just a matter of sitting down and writing a pros and cons list and analyzing which one is going to point me into the closest direction to where I want to go. I think another way to, another metaphor to use in this scenario is jobs are the short game. Those are immediate goals. So like these jobs can be, really great opportunities, and they might fulfill immediate goals at this point. But you also want to make sure that those goals complement your long game, which is your career. And if a job is going to complement it, then that's the job you want. If a job is not going to complement it, and it's only adhering or solving one of your tiny goals, which might be money or might be the fact that it's a neat organization, but everything else doesn't complement your long game, then I would think really, really hard before making that sort of decision. Again, there's different strategies, and it's going to be different for everyone, but you just really have to look at everything objectively, and not make decisions based on one aspect of a job.
Yeah, I think regardless of your age and what point you are in your career, you're always going to have options on the table where you have to make tough choices. And some of the choices you might make a mistake and make something that you look back on and you regret. Other choices, you'll make a decision and it will be the best one that you've ever made. I think at the end of the day, you can't beat yourself up too much about the decisions. One of the things that a lot of people do when it comes to figuring out how they're going to enter the job market, whether or not they should take an internship or if they should leave a job for another or quitting their job entirely, is that they find themselves kind of standing still, and you accept the status quo, you accept the situation around you, and you just stand still because you're comfortable. Regardless of what type of choice you have to make, it's going to be uncomfortable. Making a decision to take one internship over another is going to make you feel uncomfortable because on the other side of that decision is a little bit of uncertainty. You never know exactly how something is going to work out in your career. So you do have to sometimes just go with your gut and jump into something and figure it out as you go. If I was to say, my piece of advice when it comes to making a decision around an organization that you're going to join, try to spend a lot of time getting to know the corporate culture within that organization. Get to know the people who you will be reporting directly to, because people typically do not leave a job because of the organization. They leave a job because of their boss or their manager. So spend some time really understanding who it is that you'll be working with, and understand how they see you as an individual with the capacity to grow within the organization, and understand how they communicate with their team, and then use that as like a benchmark to say, okay, is this an opportunity for me to take advantage of? But like, if you are just starting out in your career, I 100% believe that you do need to kind of go easy on yourself. Like, my first big career choice was the decision to work at summer camps instead of taking an internship with a bunch of ad agencies. I could have jumped into the marketing game at a very young age, but I decided that I wanted to spend my summers working with least fortunate kids all across Canada. And that was something that I did, and I'm very grateful that I took that opportunity, because it was some impactful experience, and I was able to give back and ultimately have some amazing experiences that will last me a lifetime.
And to your point, Ross, I really like that comment about interviewing people. I think that's a really, really good strategy when you are making big career decisions. Because when you look at, let's be honest, a communicator or a marketer probably wrote the job description that you're reading, and we're really, really good at making things sound good. I mean, we're honest. We're always honest, and no one lies, or at least, we, those of us in public relations and communication that adhere to an ethical code, we are never going to lie. But we are really good at making things sound good. So sometimes when you read a job description, you're reading it from the positive light, which, I mean, in some cases, that could be at face value. But if you take a little bit more of a cynical look at things, you want to make sure that you're getting every side of the story, and not just the HR department side of how this job is supposed to be. And interviewing a predecessor, I actually did that to get my job here at CAA. I sat down with the person who actually had my job before me, and I said, walk me through your day. Tell me about what you do on a daily basis. And I found out a remarkable amount of things from that. Not only did it, it help me with my interview, because I was able to get an inside scoop of some of the projects, but when I was making a decision on whether or not I wanted to go for that job, knowing what my day might actually look like, it actually got me really excited. And I then wanted to fight for that job, because it sounded like something that I would be good at. If you can't get to the person who was working in the position before you, even just reaching out to a couple of people in the organization and getting a feel for their corporate culture, that's what you said, Ross, totally worth it, and really, really important, because you spend hours, and I mean, I'm not really good at math, but you're spending from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, or in some cases you might be spending even longer days there on some of the days. Sometimes you may even be spending weekends, which means you're in this organization with these people in a building with everyone. You need to make sure that you feel comfortable with the people who work there and comfortable with the environment. And also, as communicators, I feel like as a communicator, I think we communicate better when we're passionate and when we believe in something. And working for an organization where you don't believe in their culture, their corporate culture, their mission, their vision, and their values is going to make your life really, really difficult. But if you do believe in everything, and you've done your research, and you do like the values, then you've answered your question.
Hi, Young PR Pros listeners. My name is Sharon Chung. I'm a PR professional in Ottawa, Canada, and this podcast in particular has helped jumpstart my career, whether through relevant industry insights or reminders for transitioning from role to role. So keep listening.
So the idea of priorities, they're a hugely important tool when it comes to making any decision, but of course a career decision. And thinking on that idea of over-analysis and thinking through things. When it comes to career decisions, how do you, or how have you in the past, prioritized certain things, and why?
Now, another priority before I pass it off to you, Ross, is to make sure, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself from the beginning of the episode, you do want to actually keep the whole money on the table and make sure that you are evaluating that. We might have different opportunities available to us, and maybe they're all equal and the only difference is money. Another thing that you do want to keep in mind is you don't want to be poor for the rest of your life, or you don't want to be struggling for the rest of your life. If you're happy as a whole in life because you have a home you like, you have a lifestyle that you like, you're able to travel or whatever you like to do in life, that bleeds into your happiness in career. And likewise, if you're happy in your career, just like I said, if you're happy with your company's culture, then that bleeds into your personal life as well and kind of melds in together. So making sure that you're happy with the company culture, and then you're also actually evaluating, okay, I love this job, I love this opportunity, and here's the money that they're going to offer me, and here's the lifestyle that money is going to give me. We have to be realistic and make sure that we're comfortable with all three of those. And if for some reason that's not going to support the lifestyle that you want, maybe it's a sacrifice you're willing to do for a while because you know there is opportunities to rise later on and get more money. And that is often the case, is you sometimes need to make those sacrifices. But if you're a type of person that making that sacrifice is not going to be a happy thing for you, then you have to reevaluate and think, maybe there's an opportunity that will satisfy all three of those buckets: a happy company culture, money that I can live with, and a lifestyle that I'm happy with. So being realistic and looking at everything, and also looking at how your job is going to affect your personal life and how your personal life is going to affect your career life. It's all one life, and the more you treat it as all part of your life and not two separate things, personal and career, I think the more happy you are, the more happy you're going to be over the long term.
It's awesome. I would say for me, there's really two priorities. The most important one, with no question in my opinion, is growth. In the early days of your career, you are coming out of university, you're coming out of college, you're coming out of a degree of some sort or some type of designation, and you have exactly the same amount of skills as everybody else who walks across the stage with you. Your first gigs that you take are going to have a lasting impact on your ability to accelerate your skill sets and your talents. So you need to take opportunities that will allow you to do exactly that. And you have to accelerate quickly because you have to beat every single person that you have graduated with. And I know that sounds competitive, but that is my perspective. It's you have to accelerate your skills rapidly. You need to connect with people rapidly. You need to build a reputation for yourself. You need to build up a Rolodex as it relates to contacts quickly. You need to come out of the gate, guns blazing, connecting with people, growing. Growth rules everything in those first few years. It doesn't matter if you start off making $24,000. If you are in an opportunity where you are connecting with movers and shakers, you are tapped into a culture where you're getting a chance to touch a wide variety of different elements within an organization, the opportunity is huge. Fast forward 5 years, if you've taken on an opportunity where the pay may not have been that great, but your acceleration for learning was rapid and 10 times faster than the other person who took a corporate gig and they were passing around coffee and they didn't really do much, you are going to win at the end of the day because you had that acceleration. So I would suggest growth as being the number one focus when you are first starting off in your career. And then once you've gone through the motions of trying to learn as much as you can about an industry and figuring out exactly what it is that gets you excited in the morning, what type of role you want to take on, then it's time to start chasing the good almighty dollar, which would be the second priority, where you go after opportunities that are going to ensure that you can live life to what Kristine was saying around, like, essentially you want to live life. You want to have a budget that allows you to live life to the standards that you have set for yourself. So you need to say, okay, this is what I want to be able to do with my life. Maybe it's I want to be able to go on a vacation down south every year. So you need to have a job that allows for that. Maybe you want to move downtown and have a nice condo, whatever that may be. You need to find a job that allows you to live that lifestyle. So it's all about growth, and then from there you have to ensure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed financially.
I'm Kristine D'Arbelles, and welcome to Young PR Pro's first ever book report. Just like when you were in elementary school, I will present a book report complete with main characters, plot summaries, and lessons learned, but without the anxiety and squeaky voice of a 12-year-old. This book report is on No Fears, No Excuses: What You Need to Do to Have a Great Career by Larry Smith, a professor of economics at the University of Waterloo. I had the pleasure of auditing one of Larry Smith's economic classes when I was in university. I was a Queen's student visiting my boyfriend who told me about a really interesting professor he had. So I snuck into the back of the classroom and listened to the first 20 minutes of his lecture. As I glanced around, I actually realized I wasn't the only infidel student trying to catch a free class. Smith welcomed non-students and students alike as he presented his weekly take on the economic state of Canada and the world. In his talks and in everyday conversation, Smith can be very blunt. He became a household name when he presented a TEDx talk titled "Why You Will Fail to Have a Great Career." He got so many emails, both angry and happy regarding his talk, that he decided to write a book, giving him a chance to dive deeper into the meaning behind it. I was one of the angry people. I didn't send an email, but instead I vented to my husband, trying to find holes in all of Smith's arguments. In essence, I was being defensive, because, I admit it now, Smith was right. His 10-minute talk was not enough to explain the intricacies of the modern-day world of career building, nor will this 5-minute book report. But my goal is not to explain Smith's argument, but rather get you excited enough to read the book. So what does Smith mean by a great career? A career is great when it offers satisfying work, impact on the world, a dependable and adequate income, and personal freedom. Take a moment to evaluate your career. Does it hit all the marks? Smith starts off with a fair picture of our job hunting society. Things have changed, yet people still hunt for jobs and build their careers based on decade-old advice. We live in a world of disruptive technology and ideas, whether it's IBM being blindsided by Microsoft or Uber destabilizing the taxi industry. Companies are surviving differently in the 21st century, which means they are hiring differently. Smith says it's time for a new strategy. Okay, so now you know what a great career is, and Smith has painted a high-competitive, Hunger Games-like environment to search for your next job. And then he has the nerve to say you need passion. Passion does me no good in a survival of the fittest job hunt. I need a weapon. After a long-winded talk of the importance of passion, he gets down to business and gives you the weapon, a career-building strategy. And passion. He offers a step-by-step approach to finding your true passion, building and cultivating your talents and skills, and landing a job that not only is fulfilling, but pays. He talks of the importance of having a team, which is different than a network. Young PR Pros has said 1,000 times that you will get nowhere in your career if you do not network. Smith actually takes it a step further. He does acknowledge the importance of a network, but he stresses the importance of a team. What's the difference? A network of people you know, and who think of you in a positive way, is one of the pools from which you recruit your team. Unlike a network, which should be so big you cannot from memory recall all of its members, a team is small, cohesive, and ready and able to help achieve your career goals. The network is available while your team is on call. Smith also touches on a very important aspect of career building: fears and excuses. For example, how many of us have passed up an opportunity because we were afraid or found an excuse, that good old excuse, it isn't a good time right now? Remember how I said Smith can be blunt? Well, he doesn't filter himself in his book. Be prepared to hear some good, harsh truth. Smith wraps up the book with an aptly named conclusion: taking action. This is the part of the book where you take what you have learned and start putting some of it to use. Smith even lays out conversations you should have with your spouse, family, and friends. I bought the book out of spite. I was going to read it in boasts that it was nothing but a poorly written self-help book. But I couldn't. Smith has reinvigorated the passion I feel in my career and has pushed me to strive for more. He used stories and easy conversational language to make this book an easy read. Whether you are just beginning your career or have had many years to contemplate your career, Smith's book is a must-read if you are looking to have a great career.
So back to all this career talk and making things all about me, because this episode is something that I'm really excited about. I want to talk about some of the career decisions that the biggest ones that I've ever made, because I think they're probably something that a lot of other students feel and a lot of young professionals, and also something that Ross kind of mentioned himself. I mean, some of the biggest ones I've ever made include that switch from working the summer jobs to working a more career style job or career track. I used to work in the backwoods of Northern Ontario as a summer and park ranger. So I would clean trails and do brush and do animal tagging. And it was a hard decision to pass up. On one hand, I was like a 17-year-old sacrificing work and getting paid for something that I really like to do, to work in an investment firm in Toronto's financial district. So, I mean, both were great, don't get me wrong, and the choice opened doors for me as far as moving away from that whole summer job ideology. But I think that is a really big point for a lot of kids, is giving up the more fun traditional summer jobs to that kind of real office job world. The next biggest decision I've made is one that I'm actually making right now, and it's playing out in front of me, because since graduating, I have had to turn down more consistent and stable communications industry work and public relations stuff so I could try this whole gig as a journalist and working in the media. And, you know, as someone who has joked forever that her only goal out of school was to get a job, it was really uncomfortable to actually turn down those real contracts and salaries after thinking about them to work an on-call, part-time, temporary basis. It's a decision that very, very recently, so much so that a couple days ago, I'm actually going back to school now. Starting this fall, I will be continuing my studies. I'm going to go and focus on radio broadcasting. So exciting things, but it's that tough decision when you're leaving school of, are you really done? So, that being said, these are probably not necessarily the biggest decisions I'll ever make, probably not the hardest I'll ever make. And you guys have had much longer and way more successful careers than I have. So you've definitely got stories and anecdotes of your own. But what I'm really curious about is, have you guys made any decisions that, looking back, you kind of regret, or maybe you wish you could change now that you're past them?
So my biggest regret is actually kind of related to what you're doing right now, Claire, the fact that you're going back to school. I went to Queen's University to get my Bachelor of Honors in Language and Linguistics, and really, really enjoyed it. I loved my 4 years. When I was done, I was starting to get a little bit tired of school, so I headed back to my hometown in Ottawa, Canada, and started to look around. Actually got a job as a translator for a couple of months and realized that I really didn't like it. So then I decided to go back to school, and I stumbled upon the public relations program at Algonquin College. And that is when I found my true passion in PR and communications. And then once I was done, I was one of the lucky few who actually was pretty much hired right out of school, out of my internship. So I did my internship, and they hired me even before I graduated. So then I started to get a paycheck, and the world started to look really different, and I was able to have disposable income, which is something you don't necessarily have when you're a student. So I got really comfortable with making a paycheck, and then just continued to work. And I've been working for 5, almost 6 years now in the field. One thing, and maybe it's not so much of a regret, but one thing that I really wish I would have done is actually a master's in PhD. I'm one of those people, if you would pay me to be a student, I'd be a student for the rest of my life. I love learning in a classroom. And I really want a master's and a PhD one day. And I'm hoping, I don't think all hope is lost. And just because you don't do a master's right after you graduate doesn't mean that you don't get the opportunity to do it. It's just a little bit harder, and it's a reality that I'm going to have to face. And you know what? You find excuses all the way through your life on not wanting to do something. And I was like, well, I have to pay for student debt, so I need to start working. But you know what? In hindsight, now that I'm a wife and a mother, doing a master's part-time is definitely going to be a interesting challenge. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it you will one day know me as the person who has a master's and PhD. It's just going to take a lot longer than I thought. So that's a slight regret. I kind of wish I would have just continued on and done some more schooling while I was in a position in my life that it was a little bit easier. But I also got to work at a remarkable organization. I got to work for Thornley Fallis Communications, which then led to my current job right now. And I couldn't be happier. So just like Ross was saying early on in the career, you can't beat yourself up for little decisions, and you make the decisions you make based on all the information you have at that point in your life. So I do believe I made the right decision, but I do regret not being able to get a master's and a PhD right away. But we will see. One day I will get there. I will get there. It's just going to take a while. And another thing that I regret is not traveling as much as I could have when I was younger. Now, I've had a ton of opportunities to travel now with in the past, 2 or 3 years, I've actually traveled a significant amount, but the majority of it has been for business. But one thing that I regret is when I was at university, I had the opportunity to potentially apply for doing 1 semester abroad. At the time, I use excuses of, I didn't have the money to do it, but I'm pretty sure if I would have pinched my pennies and worked hard, I probably could have found a way to do it financially. Maybe I was just afraid to be in a different country for so long. But if you have the opportunity to study or work abroad, even for a couple of months, even for a month, it doesn't matter. I think that really broadens an individual's horizon, and we work in an increasingly globalized world, and I think it's important to understand different cultures, even to learn different languages, and I think it makes everyone a more well-rounded individual. So if you do have the opportunity to travel, I would definitely take that opportunity if you can. Even, in between semesters, if you want to work abroad for a couple of months, there's tons of opportunities and programs out there for students. Take those opportunities. I think it does help young professionals grow and see kind of what's out there in the world. And who knows, you make neat connections, you meet people. Anyway, it's anything to do with getting outside of your own backyard. And again, that doesn't mean you have to take a plane and fly across the other side of the world. It could just mean working in a different city. I mean, you look at Canada, we're a huge country. You could just get up and drive across the border and go into a different province and work there. There's going to be a different world there, and you're going to be exposed to different realities. And I think that's important as a communicator to be strategic, because we tend to live in our own little bubble, and sometimes just breaking that bubble and getting out and seeing what the world is thinking differently than you helps you become a little bit more objective when you're thinking about how to position your own client or position your own organization in the communications world.
Yeah, I think for me, I 100% agree with those two things. I think if I was to go back in time, I would tell 20-year-old Ross to double down on education and spend some more time taking additional courses, particularly in courses that would challenge you. There's no question that when I went to university, I looked at my potential classes and I would say, oh, it's biology or it's a psych course. I'm going to take whatever I've heard or have read online are easy, and I'm going to kill these courses, but they're going to be easy, so I'm going to take them. Versus challenging myself and taking something like computer science or advanced statistics or one of those more challenging courses. I definitely ensured that I had a easy time through university when it could have been more challenging for me if I pushed myself to take those more difficult courses. So I would say my biggest regret is taking the easy way throughout university by ensuring that I didn't take courses that really made me uncomfortable. And just saying, okay, I'm going to take whatever I know I will do extremely well in, versus things that would push me to kind of level up my skills and push me to kind of get uncomfortable with the material itself. And then second, I think spend more time on a plane, invest time in building networks far away from Canada, all over the world. The world is huge, and we're going into a time where the world is really your oyster. You can do business anywhere, from anywhere. So build relationships with people from all over the world. Don't be afraid to get on a plane. Don't be afraid to spend a month in the States, a month in Europe, a month in Australia, New Zealand, you name it. Take the time to take in different cultures and build relationships that will change your life.
Well, now I'm feeling inspired to travel.
Do it. I still do it. Travel is amazing.
I'm Corey Richard, and I'm a communications assistant in Halifax. I originally started listening to Young PR Pros for the Canadian content, and I stayed for the networking tips and thoughtful perspectives on industry trends.
So today I want to kind of switch up with the lessons learned, because you guys aren't learning as much as I am, and maybe do a sort of final word segment. So I want you guys to share maybe what you learned today, but also really just give a final word of advice to our listeners on what to do and how to handle those big career decisions when they come their way.
So my final advice is going back to not having regrets. If you have the opportunity to travel, then go for it. If you have the opportunity to do more schooling and you really, really love schooling, take that opportunity early on, because it definitely does get harder when you are in the workforce. If you are like me and you're in the workforce and you want to get a master's and a PhD, jump for it and go for it and do it right away. Don't wait. I mean, in some cases, there are some important strategies where you should wait for things. In other cases, sometimes, like Ross was saying early on in the episode, any decision you make is going to make you uncomfortable. Standing still often is the wrong decision. Sometimes you just need to jump, and making a change in your career or doing something unique and different. You won't regret doing it. So obviously, always evaluate and make sure it's going to help your career and help you build a happy lifestyle. But yeah, I would say, my biggest advice is no regrets.
Yeah, I think my final piece of advice would be, at the end of the day, every single day we have choices. We are encountered with them when we decide whether we're going to press snooze on our alarm clock or if we're going to get up and actually put in the work. We make decisions when it comes to our careers around whether or not we're going to take an internship or not. But oftentimes we find ourselves not making a choice and just standing still. And I think that that's the one thing I would suggest, is that you realize that standing still and not doing anything is still a choice. So be aggressive and intentional with the actions that you take, because everything that you do does have a spin-off result. So be intentional with what you're doing, be intentional with your decisions, and be strategic throughout it as well. Take time. Don't allow any boss or manager to rush you through your decisions. These are decisions that will shape your life, and your life is all you've got. So that would be my advice.
And although I did a lot more learning than leading this episode, I will chime in and say that one piece of advice that I would give to anyone else in my situation is reach out to people who have done it before, like I just did. There's so many people out there who want to offer advice and have experienced those exact same things that you have, and, can offer really solid advice. So whether it's listening to podcasts like this one, or even just going to your mom and dad, or, other graduates, if there's an alumni program from the school that you came from, don't be afraid to reach out and ask how other people handled situations. And sometimes you might get exactly what you thought, and other times you might get advice that you'd never really considered, and it can really help you. So that's what I learned.
Thank you so much for listening. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at youngprpros@gmail.com. Check out our blog at youngprpros.ca, on Facebook at Young PR Pros Podcast, and on Twitter at Young PR Pros. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time. This episode featured tracks from Boddington Bear. Sound work and editing by Clare Bonnyman.